Truth behind every dark conspiracy. Let's shed some light on this topic. Like, we don't have to sit here in the dark. So every conspiracy is basically related to criminal hypnosis. You can go all the way back to the Pleiades and the Fates and note almost every single magical condition that has ever existed relates right back to the idea of hypnosis and games with the mind and imagination. Now, prophecy is an effectual thing, and it's actually something that is designed to provide us to prevent birth defects. So you can use the presentment and the foreboding to provide coitus interruptus and prevent the climax to allow for the disruption of the reproduction cycle with a prophecy. And the prophecy is there to actually for you to read it afterwards, so you understand why you disengaged from the first place. Now, this ability has been abused greatly. And when you take prophecies from infants or things that cannot reproduce, the prophecy that is provided is equally as nuts as trying to provide an infant from a child. So every single prophecy, if you want to name aliens, if you want to name government conspiracy as they try and figure this stuff out, so like every single one of the greater experiments done on people in the last century. If you want to go into the McCarthyist communers, if you want to go into what's Eagle's Nest in Nazism and what's behind the Nazis and what started the wars and what everything else is the exact same thing. It's criminal hypnosis and a bunch of people who are fighting against criminal hypnosis and a bunch of people who are fighting of criminal hypnosis and for its freedom. And obviously it's criminal, so I mean, we definitely are going to object it from it, but it is the nature of the true function. It is also the reason why girls in a large part are not allowed to be equal, because it is largely a female ability. Now, men have the capability, they have the power, they have the function, but they are rarely concerned with it that way. So men don't do it. We would more wanting to have a statistical form than a functional one. I'm just going to get some more light on you. There we go. So in prophetic form, the conspiracy increases and it allows for predetermination or presentment or auguring or so many other words for foreboding and fortune telling and soothsaying and prognostication, and like it just goes on and on. Promulation, I think, is another one. I'm not sure if that one's right. Promulation. Anyway, there's so many words that describe that capability that it is irrational not to assume that there is something going on there. And because everybody wants to disassociate from it because it's a criminal habit, the nature is that any information on it is going to be destroyed. So Frank Mesmer's information, so now we're into book burning and churches being burnt down, and again, secret assassinations and a bunch of other stuff that goes on. So every single conspiracy relates back to criminal hypnosis and the capabilities of the mind to be able to trick. So you have all the people trying to put stuff in you who are of the same involvement and trying to get you to react of the same involvement. And they use every single mental manipulation and game that exists to be able to further augment the reality to prevent the truth from ever being released. And so it generates the conspiracy theories. And that is the general nature behind most conspiracy theories. And nations forget it. So they have the information, they know the information, and then governments later, because it was kept secret, forget that the information even exists. So because it's classified and nobody knows what's going on there, nobody ever does figure out what's going on there. And most scientific experiments into it get tampered with. So it's a very, very difficult science, and it's a very difficult field to actually be in, to understand what a conspiracy theory is. So aliens, again, are just an irrational thought of the imagination, in a sense, that is something that could happen where that child would then be possible. Like, that's what would have to occur. Aliens would have to show up to make it possible for you to have the child with the baby, that where you're taking the prophecy from, where that engagement of that is from. So it's a bunch of formal truths that go into it. Religion is heavily involved, but again, they have forgotten the actual realities and reasons. They have their patrons and their forefathers and foremothers, and the entirety of what they learned and what the lesson was taught gets disassociated. And again, this is another conspiracy theory for the schisms of the churches and all the invasions of the churches and the destruction of the churches. The same as with all law and government, that anything that would provide any kind of control to what is going on there is completely obliterated, so that your government becomes a tripped up fanatical environment of concentrated power that can be easily hypnotized. And it's just how it progresses and how it functions. Every single society has dealt with the issue, and every single society has dealt with it badly, or else that society, that civilization would still be around. And they're not, because they could not deal with this one issue. And this issue relates throughout history to be able to have science that way. In biology, it's again, there's a whole bunch of science for it, like the reproduction or attempts to artificially inseminate cheetah, and like to repopulate some of the species when they're more advanced or higher life forms, and how difficult it is to actually get them to procreate, and a bunch of other functional forms that we as nomads, we as individuals, we as in separation have figured out, where we can no longer gain that separation to figure it out, and we all now suffer from the conditions which are applied upon us. So the conspiracy then causes paranoia when you're being aspectly violated by criminal hypnosis. So I mean, it's a continuous cycle of snowballing effect that is conspiracy theory, but in the end, it's all about the exact same thing. It's just it's just hypnosis and the effects and functions thereof. And I mean, you can name any conspiracy theory, from who was trying to be assassinated when, to what arrived when, and who built what, and why you don't know and have the information to say, no, that was just people who built it with hydrology. It's just a pyramid. It's not built by aliens. It's just something that we built by floating rocks on rafts and built the entire thing that way. But nobody is going to understand that until it's either redone and displayed publicly, but the information was all destroyed because nobody wants it done again, because at one point the entire pyramid structures were taken over by the same criminal hypnotists that I'm talking of now, and had to get rooted out of Egypt because they had become a slave state, which is what they always become. And that's just how that functions in the way it runs. The hive mind makes drones. That's what it does. So, like, I mean, it's just the nature of the state of humanity that exists this way to provide for the conspiracy theory. And so we are stuck living with it, but it's not hard to figure out once you know the triggers and truths behind them to actually point to the real reason, why and what and how and what is truly going on. That's the answer. So that's every conspiracy theory in a nutshell. And you can name one below, and I might make a point on it to make another video.